Hey there, everyone. Before we dive into this super fun story, I want you to do something quick. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from today. Are you at home, at school, or maybe somewhere totally cool? And if you love stories where the bad guy gets a big surprise, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my tales. Okay, let's get going. Have you ever had a neighbor who just loved making trouble? Like they're always complaining about something silly. Well, get ready to meet Jake Turner, a nice guy who only wanted to have fun in his backyard. But his neighbor, Karen, was about to make things super wild. Here, the crazy part, Karen had no idea Jake was hiding something that would totally shock her. Want to find out what it was? Keep listening because this story is gonna be awesome. Jake was the kind of person who didn't bother anyone. He was friendly, always waving hello to everyone on his street. He'd mow his lawn every Saturday, making it look neat and tidy. He never played loud music or threw big parties. Jake just liked to keep things simple. His favorite thing in the whole world was his little outdoor TV. He put it up in his backyard so he could watch games with his friends. It wasn't a huge TV, and it wasn't super loud. It was just right for him and his buddies to cheer for their team, eat some popcorn, and have a good time. Jake loved those nights. They made him smile and feel happy after a long week. Now, Jake's neighborhood had something called an HOA. That stands for Homeowners Association. It's like a group of people who make rules to keep the neighborhood looking nice. Things like, don't paint your house bright purple, or keep your grass short. Most of the time, the rules made sense and Jake followed them. But the person in charge of the HOA was Karen, and oh boy, Karen was something else. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was the kind who walked around with a clipboard, checking everyone's yards like a teacher looking for messy desks. If someone left a bike on their driveway or hung a Christmas light a little crooked, Karen would write it down and send them a grumpy letter. Everyone knew her, and most people tried to stay out of her way. Karen's house was right across the street from Jake's. From her front porch she could see everything he did, and for some reason Jake's outdoor TV made her really mad. The first time Jake turned it on, Karen was out there in a flash, staring at his backyard like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. To her, that TV was like a giant sign saying, "I'm breaking the rules." But here's the thing. Jake checked the HOA rules, and there was nothing about outdoor TVs. He made sure it wasn't too loud, and he only used it at night for a couple of hours. So why was Karen so upset? Was it really about the TV, or was something else going on? Let's go back to Jake for a second. He wasn't the kind of guy who liked fighting. If someone was mean, he'd just smile and walk away. He figured life was too short to argue over little things. When he moved into the neighborhood, he was excited to make new friends. He'd chat with other neighbors like Mr. Lopez, who grew the best tomatoes, or Sarah, who walked her fluffy dog every morning. Everyone liked Jake because he was kind and easy to talk to. But Karen, she didn't even give him a chance. From the moment he set up that TV, it was like she decided he was her enemy. The first game night was so much fun. Jake invited his friends Mike and Tim over to watch basketball. They set up some chairs in the backyard, grabbed sodas from the fridge, and turned on the TV. The game was exciting and they cheered when their team scored. The sound wasn't loud at all. Jake made sure of that. He didn't want to bother anyone. They laughed, ate snacks, and had the best time. Jake felt so happy, like his backyard was the perfect spot to relax. But across the street, Karen was watching. She stood on her porch with her arms crossed, glaring at Jake's fence. Her clipboard was in her hand and she was writing something down. Jake didn't notice her at first, but his friend Mike did. "Who's that lady staring at us?" Mike whispered. Jake looked over and saw Karen. He waved, thinking maybe she just wanted to say hi. But Karen didn't wave back. She turned and marched into her house, slamming the door. The next morning, Jake was watering his flowers when Karen came storming over. Her face was all scrunched up, like she'd just smelled something bad. "That TV of yours is a problem," she said, pointing at his backyard. Jake was confused. "What's wrong with it?" he asked politely. "It's loud, it's ugly, and it's against the rules," Karen snapped. Jake stayed calm, even though he was surprised. "I'm sorry you feel that way," he said, "but I checked the rules and it's okay. It's not loud, I promise." Karen didn't like that answer. She huffed and said, "We'll see about that." Then she spun around and walked away, her clipboard bouncing in her hand. Jake scratched his head, wondering what just happened. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted to watch his games. But Karen's words stuck with him. Why was she so mad about something so small? He started to think maybe it wasn't about the TV at all. Maybe Karen had another reason for picking on him. He didn't know it yet, but he was right. Karen was hiding something, and Jake's TV was just an excuse to keep everyone looking at him instead of her. That night, Jake sat on his porch and thought about what to do. He could take down the TV, but that didn't feel fair. He wasn't breaking any rules, and he loved his game nights. He decided to keep it up and see what happened. Maybe Karen would calm down, or maybe she'd try something bigger. Either way, Jake wasn't going to let her ruin his fun without a good reason. He smiled to himself, thinking about his friends and their next game night. Whatever Karen was planning, he'd be ready. Now let's talk about the neighborhood for a minute. It was a nice place with neat houses and green lawns. Kids rode bikes down the street and people walked their dogs in the evening. There was a park nearby where families had picnics, and every summer the HOA threw a big barbecue. Jake loved living there. He felt like it was home. But Karen made things tricky. She wasn't just bossy, she was sneaky. Other neighbors told Jake stories about her. Like how she fined Mrs. Carter for planting tulips that were too bright. Or how she told Mr. Lopez his tomato garden was messy, even though everyone loved his tomatoes. Karen acted like she owned the whole neighborhood, and most people were too tired to argue with her. Jake wasn't tired, though. He was curious. Why did Karen care so much about his TV? Was she just grumpy, or was there more to it? He started paying attention to her. He noticed she was always busy, always watching everyone. But sometimes, late at night, he'd see strange cars parked at her house. People would come and go, carrying bags. It was weird, but Jake didn't want to jump to conclusions. He figured maybe she had family visiting. Still, it made him wonder, what was Karen up to? So here, where things get interesting, Jake's TV wasn't just a TV anymore, it was the start of something big. Karen thought she could scare Jake into following her orders, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. Jake wasn't loud or mean, but he was smart. He watched and listened, picking up little clues. Every time Karen complained, he got a little closer to figuring out her secret. And that secret, it was going to turn everything upside down. Want to know what happens next? Oh, it's so good. Karen's about to make a huge mistake, and Jake's surprise is going to leave her with her mouth wide open. But I won't spill it yet. You've got to keep listening to find out. For now, think about this. Have you ever met someone who seemed mean for no reason? Maybe, just maybe, they were hiding something too. Let's see what Jake does about it. Karen was not messing around. The very next day after Jake's fun game night with his friends, she marched right up to his front door. Her face was super red, like a bright stop sign you see on the road. She pointed her finger at Jake and said, "That TV in your backyard is awful. It's ugly and it's against the rules. I'm telling the HOA on you." Jake didn't get mad even though Karen was yelling. He stayed nice and calm. He smiled and said, "Hey, Karen, it's just a little TV for watching games. It's not loud and nobody can hear it past my fence." But Karen didn't care what Jake said. She wasn't listening at all. She just shook her head, muttered something about fines, and stomped away. Jake watched her go, scratching his head. He thought, maybe she's just having a bad day. She'll probably forget about it. Oh boy, was he wrong. A few days later, Jake went to his mailbox to check for letters. Inside was a fancy-looking envelope from the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, remember? Jake opened it and his eyes got big. The letter said he had to take down his TV right away or he'd have to pay a huge fine, $500. That's a lot of money, like enough to buy a ton of candy or a new bike. Jake couldn't believe it. He sat down on his porch and read the letter again, just to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Nope, it was real. The letter said his TV was against the rules and was disturbing the neighborhood. Jake was super confused. He pulled out the HOA rulebook from a drawer. He read every page, looking for anything about TVs. Guess what? There was nothing. Not one single rule said you couldn't have a TV outside. Jake leaned back in his chair, thinking hard. Why is Karen doing this? He wondered. This isn't fair at all. Jake started to feel like Karen was picking on him for no reason. He hadn't done anything wrong. His TV was quiet and his game nights were just him and a couple of friends having fun. They didn't bother anybody. So why was Karen so mad? Was it really about the TV or was something else going on? Jake didn't know it yet, but Karen's big complaints were like a trick. She was trying to hide something snaky, something she didn't want anybody in the neighborhood to figure out. The next day, Jake saw Karen walking around with her clipboard again. She was checking everybody's yards, writing things down like always. When she got to Jake's house, she stopped and stared at his backyard. Jake was outside watering his plants. He waved and said, "Hi, Karen," trying to be friendly. But Karen just gave him a mean look and kept writing on her clipboard. Jake sighed. He didn't like this at all. He went inside and called his friend Mike, who was at the game night. "Mike," Jake said, "Karen's really mad about my TV. She sent me a letter saying I have to pay $500 if I keep it up." Mike laughed, thinking it was a joke. $500 for a TV? That's crazy, he said. What's her deal? Jake didn't know, but he was starting to get curious. "I think she's up to something," he told Mike. "I'm gonna keep my eyes open." A couple of days later, things got even weirder. Jake was taking out his trash when he saw Karen standing by his fence, taking pictures of his backyard with her phone. She was trying to be sneaky, but Jake spotted her. "Hey, Karen, what's up?" he called out. Karen jumped like she'd been caught stealing cookies. "Nothing," she said quickly, and she hurried away. Jake thought that was super strange. Why was she taking pictures of his TV? It wasn't hurting anybody. He started to wonder if Karen was trying to make him look bad on purpose. Maybe she wanted everyone to think Jake was a troublemaker so they wouldn't notice something else. That night, Jake sat on his couch thinking about everything. He remembered what his neighbor Sarah told him a while back. Sarah was nice and she walked her fluffy dog every day. She said Karen was always bossing people around, telling them to fix things in their yards. But Sarah also said something interesting. Karen's house sometimes had weird stuff going on. Like late at night, there were cars Jake didn't recognize parked there. People would come and go, and it didn't seem like they were just friends visiting. Jake hadn't thought much about it before, but now it stuck in his mind. Was Karen hiding something? Was that why she was so mean about his TV? The next morning, Jake decided to talk to another neighbor, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Lopez was old and wise, and he grew the yummiest tomatoes in his garden. Jake knocked on his door and said, "Mr. Lopez, can I ask you something? Karen's really mad about my TV and I don't know why." Mr. Lopez nodded slowly. "That Karen," he said, "she's always looking for trouble, but you know what? I heard she's been doing some sneaky things herself. I don't want to say too much, but be careful, Jake." Jake thanked him and walked home, his brain buzzing. Now he was sure Karen's complaints weren't just about his TV. She was trying to keep everybody busy so they wouldn't notice whatever she was up to. Jake wasn't scared, though. He was smart and patient. He decided to keep doing what he loved, watching games with his friends. He wasn't going to let Karen bully him, but he also started watching her a little closer. Every time she walked by with her clipboard, he paid attention. Every time she said something mean, he remembered it. He didn't know what Karen was hiding, but he was going to find out. And when he did, things were going to get very interesting. Karen thought she could boss Jake around, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. Jake wasn't loud or mean, but he wasn't going to give up. His TV was staying, and he was going to figure out what Karen was really up to. What was her big secret? Why was she so worried about a little TV? Jake had a feeling it was something big, and he couldn't wait to find out. Days went by, and Karen didn't stop. She got even bossier about Jake's little backyard TV. Every chance she got, she'd stand by his fence holding her phone like a spy. Snap, 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 she took pictures of the TV, acting like it was the worst thing ever. Jake thought it was so weird. It was just a TV. It wasn't loud and it wasn't ugly. Why was she acting like a detective on a big case? One night, things got crazier. Jake was having another game night with his friends Mike and Tim. They were watching soccer, cheering quietly so they wouldn't bother anyone. The TV was turned down low, softer than a whisper. But then Jake looked up and saw Karen's head poking over the fence. Her eyes were squinting and she looked super mad. "You're making too much noise," Karen shouted. "You're disturbing the whole neighborhood." Jake's friends stopped cheering and stared at her. Mike started to giggle because it was so silly. The TV was barely on. Jake stood up and said, "Karen, it's not loud at all. We're just watching a game." But Karen didn't listen. She waved her hands in the air like she was shooing away bugs and yelled, "I'm reporting this." Then she disappeared behind the fence. Tim looked at Jake and said, "What's her problem?" Now Jake shrugged, but inside he was starting to get annoyed. He didn't like how Karen kept picking on him for no reason. Still, he didn't yell back. He stayed calm like always, but he was starting to think hard. He grabbed a little notebook from his pocket and wrote down what happened. He decided to keep track of everything Karen did. Jake wasn't just annoyed, he was curious. He started watching Karen more closely, and you know what? He noticed something funny. Karen was always telling everyone else to follow the HOA rules, but her own yard wasn't perfect. One day, Jake walked by her house and saw a huge pink flamingo statue in her front yard. It was taller than him, with a goofy smile and bright feathers. Jake stopped and stared. He remembered the HOA rulebook. It said decorations like that weren't allowed unless you got special permission. Jake knew Karen hadn't asked anyone because she was the one who said no to everybody else's decorations. He smiled to himself. Karen was breaking her own rules. He wrote that down in his notebook, too. It was a small thing, but it made him wonder what else she was hiding. Things kept getting weirder. A few days later, Jake was talking to his neighbor Sarah while she walked her fluffy dog Max. Sarah was nice and always had a big smile. Jake told her about Karen's complaints and the fine she tried to give him. Sarah shook her head. "That Karen," she said, "she's been saying bad stuff about you to everyone. She told Mrs. Carter you're ruining the neighborhood with your TV." Jake's eyes got wide. "Ruining the neighborhood, me?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "Yup. She's telling people you're a troublemaker, but don't worry, nobody believes her. We all like you, Jake." Jake thanked her, but he felt a little mad. Why was Karen talking behind his back? It wasn't fair. Then Sarah leaned closer and lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. "You know what's weird," she said. "Karen's house has been super busy lately. I see strange people coming over at night. They park their cars, go inside for a bit, then leave with big bags. It's not like they're her friends or anything." Jake's ears perked up. "Really?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "It's odd. I don't know what she's doing, but it's not normal." Jake thanked Sarah and walked home, his brain buzzing like a beehive. Strange people late at night, big bags. That didn't sound like a friendly visit. He added it to his notebook. Now he was really curious. Was Karen up to something sneaky? The next day, Jake talked to another neighbor, Mr. Lopez, who grew yummy tomatoes. Mr. Lopez was watering his plants when Jake stopped by. "Mr. Lopez," Jake said, "Karen's been really mean about my TV, and Sarah said she's been saying I'm bad for the neighborhood." Mr. Lopez frowned. "That's not nice," he said. "Karen's always pointing fingers at other people. But you know what? I've seen things, too. Late at night, her house has lights on and there's always cars coming and going. It's like she's running some kind of secret club." Jake's heart beat faster. "A secret club?" he asked. Mr. Lopez shrugged. "I don't know what it is, but it's fishy. Just watch out, Jake." Jake nodded and said thanks. He walked away, feeling like a detective in a mystery story. Now Jake was sure Karen wasn't just being grumpy. She was trying to keep everyone's eyes on him and his TV so they wouldn't notice what she was doing. Every time she complained or took pictures, Jake got more clues. He started paying extra attention to her house. One night, he was sitting on his porch with a soda when he saw a car pull up to Karen's driveway. It was late, way past bedtime for most people. Some man got out, looked around like he didn't want to be seen, and carried a big duffel bag into Karen's house. A little while later, he came out with a different bag and drove away. Jake wrote it all down: time, car, everything. He didn't know what it meant yet, but it was another piece of the puzzle. Jake's friends noticed he was acting different. At their next game night, Mike asked, "Jake, you okay? You keep looking at Karen's house." Jake grinned. "I'm fine," he said, "but I think Karen's hiding something. She's so mad about this TV, but I'm starting to think it's a trick." Tim raised his eyebrows. "A trick? Like what?" Jake shook his head. "I don't know yet, but I'm gonna find out." His friends laughed and said, "You're like a spy now." Jake chuckled, but he was serious. He wasn't going to let Karen scare him. He loved his game nights and he wasn't doing anything wrong. If Karen wanted to play games, he'd play too, but his way. Every day, Jake kept his eyes open. He saw Karen talking to other neighbors, probably saying mean things about him. But he also saw more strange cars at her house. He heard whispers from other people too, like how Karen's garage was always locked, even when she wasn't home. Jake didn't tell anyone his ideas yet. He wanted to be sure. But with every picture Karen took, every mean word she said, Jake got closer to the truth. What was she hiding? Why was she so worried about a little TV? Something big was coming, and Jake was ready to find out what it was. It was a bright, sunny Saturday, and Jake was super excited. He was getting ready for another game night with his friends. The backyard looked perfect, chairs set up, a bowl of popcorn ready, and his little TV all plugged in. He was humming a happy tune, thinking about how fun it would be to cheer for his team. But then out of nowhere he heard a loud sound. Wee-oh-oh, wee-oh-oh, siren. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He looked down the street and saw two police cars zooming into the neighborhood. Their red and blue lights flashed like fireworks. Jake froze. "Oh no," he thought, "what's happening?" Before he could even think, he saw Karen. She was marching across the street, her face all puffed up and red like an angry tomato. She was waving her phone in the air like it was a flag. "I did it," she shouted at Jake. "I called 911. That TV of yours is a big problem and now you're in trouble." Jake stood there, his mouth open. He was so confused. His TV, a problem? It was just a little TV, and he always kept it quiet. He looked at the police cars, then back at Karen. "Karen, what are you talking about?" he asked. But Karen just smirked like she thought she'd won a big prize. "You'll see," she said. "The cops are here to shut you down." The police officers got out of their cars. They looked serious, with shiny badges on their uniforms. Jake's stomach felt all twisty. He didn't want to be in trouble. He hadn't done anything wrong. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, just like he always did. The officers walked toward Jake's house and Karen kept pointing at him, saying, "That's him. He's the one with the TV." Jake felt like he was in a bad dream. He wanted to explain, but before he could say a word, something amazing happened. Something so surprising it made his eyes pop wide open. One of the officers, a tall man with a deep voice, looked right at Karen. He didn't smile. He didn't look happy at all. "Ma'am," he said, "we're not here for him. We're here for you." The words hung in the air like a big thunderclap. Karen's face changed in a snap. It went from red and smug to pale, like she'd seen a ghost. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Jake's jaw dropped so low it almost hit the ground. "Me," Karen squeaked, her voice all shaky. The officer nodded. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "We need to talk to you." Jake stood there, blinking fast. What was going on? Why were the police here for Karen? The second officer, a woman with short hair, stepped forward. She looked at Jake and gave him a little nod like she was saying, "Don't worry, kid." Then she turned to Karen and said, "We've been watching you for a while, Ms. Karen. We got some tips from your neighbors." Karen's eyes got huge like saucers. "Tips," she said, her voice wobbling. "What tips? I didn't do anything." But the officers didn't look like they believed her. The tall officer crossed his arms and said, "Let's talk about your garage." Jake tilted his head, super confused. Karen's garage, what did that have to do with anything? Then the big reveal came, and it was like a firework exploding in Jake's brain. The woman officer explained everything in a clear, loud voice so everyone could hear. "Ms. Karen," she said, "you've been renting out your garage to strangers. You've been running a secret Airbnb, letting people stay there for money. That's against the city laws and it's definitely against the HOA rules." Jake gasped. An Airbnb in Karen's garage. He couldn't believe it. Karen, the lady who was always yelling about rules, was breaking them herself. It was like finding out a teacher was sneaking candy during class. Karen started to argue. "That's not true," she said, waving her hands. "I'm not doing anything wrong." But the officers weren't buying it. The tall one pulled out a little notebook, kind of like the one Jake used to write down clues. "We have proof," he said. "Neighbors told us about strange cars coming to your house at night. They saw people with bags going in and out of your garage. We checked, and you've been posting ads online renting it out. That's illegal without a permit." Karen's face got even paler. She looked like she wanted to run away, but there was nowhere to go. Jake stood there, his mind racing. All this time, Karen had been so mean about his TV. She'd taken pictures, sent letters, and even called the